Good afternoon, everybody. Do you feel good? Are you okay? Ready to start? This is a special session, the brains, bytes, and budgets, reviewing Europe's future, put together by European Brain Council, European Academy of Neurology, and the Brain Health Mission Partnership. So we are so excited to have you together tonight. My name is Elena Moro. I'm a professor of neurology in France, Grenoble, France, and I'm the current president of the European Academy of Neurology. So this session, I think, has been already prepared by the other sessions since yesterday, and I think we'll dive you in this huge multidisciplinary and striking an important dimension, which is the brain health dimension. Why is it important? Because the brain dimension is what makes us really human. We are supporting each other in this Europe. We are a special determinant of health, which is social determinants. Yesterday, we talked a lot about social prescription. So the brain put us together with this humanity, with this solidarity, which is particularly important today for loneliness, for frailty, and for aging dimension in Europe. So we have a very nice program for you. You will stay with us until the end. We decided to start with the best people. We have a special panel. Then we will have a fireside chat. And then you are already in groups, so we will work together separately, and then we will put our brain thinking together at the end. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Fred Destrebecq. Fred is the executive director of European Brain Council. So Fred, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elena. And whilst you're joining us on stage, so we will start with this first panel discussion to discuss, the topic of this year's forum, the principle of solidarity, but also resilience through the brain health lens, as well as the potential for brain health to serve our economic prosperity, Europe's competitiveness, but also to check how investments can be renewed and can help create trust and responsibility. So on stage, I have the pleasure and privilege of being joined by Arabella Akalinei, who represents EFNA, the European Federation of Neurological Associations. Maybe the one who doesn't need an introduction, Vytenis Andriukaitis, member of the European Parliament, former Commissioner for Health and former Minister of Health of Lithuania, as well as Elisabeth Kuiper from the European Policy Center, and Elena is equally joining us for the discussion. So what we would like to address, and by ways of the conversation, and you'll see, you will have to work on that later on. You will have a master of ceremony who will put your brains at work. But the idea was really to start building on the recognition of what do we mean by brain health currently, because it's gaining a lot of momentum. It's gaining momentum at country level. It's gaining momentum at global level. If you see Elena and I yawning at times during the session, it's not because we are tired of the conversation, but rather slightly jet-lagged as we literally landed from New York in the high-level meeting on non-communicable diseases last week, where very important conversations were had, but very importantly, brain disorders and brain health were fully part of the NCD agenda at UN level and part of the UN strategy. So it's a major landmark. But next to this, we saw lots of actors like the World Economic Forum and like other think tanks picking up on the concept of brain health to really boost it in the context of the broader agenda of the brain capital, of the brain economy. And we would like possibly to touch upon those concepts during the conversation later on, as we see that they could be very important drivers for Europe and for EU's action. So it's really a vision towards a collective future, a societal change that we would like to initiate also today. So I have the feeling of having talked too much already, and we're here to listen from panelists. So we'll proceed with the, let's say, the traditional way of a very short intro to explain your background, the organization you're working from, maybe some of the key points to bring in the course of the conversation, and we'll get back to it all together. So Arabella, I would like to start with you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here with you today. I'm Arabella Calinei from Romania. And first of all, I bring you the lived experience here because I am a patient with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, a neurological condition affecting the peripheral nervous system. And I do have a lot of people in my family with the same condition, my 2 boys included. And one of them is also epileptic. Yeah, I do wear a lot of hats at the national and European level because I'm president of a Romanian association for people with neuromuscular conditions. I'm also president of the European Alliance of Neuromuscular Disorders Associations and strategic partnership and funding director in European Charcot-Marie-Tooth Federation, basically involved on my own disease. But here with you today representing EFNA, which is the European Federation of Neurological Associations. Of course, we were members of EFNA already with EAMDA because the neuromuscular condition fall into neurological conditions. But EFNA came to me like a glove in a way because my son also has epilepsy, and dealing with patients and being a patient come with a lot of mental health challenges, let's say. So very glad to be here with you speaking on behalf of EFNA, where I'm vice president since April this year. And I don't know if you need to learn more about EFNA. Basically, what I would like to say is just the fact that we embrace the concept of partnership for progress, which is very important for us. And actually, that is why we are here, to create a partnership and to push for progress.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arabella. Vitenis, I'd like to invite you for words of introduction.
You know, I can tell you, I am elected into European Parliament first time in my life. Can you imagine? And now I am member of European Parliament, member of Sant Committee, coordinator in Sant Committee, and of course I have a lot of ideas, and we will exchange those ideas in our conversation. But you know, before I also spent a little bit my life into medical area, because I am cardiosurgeon. I spent 23 years in practice. Then I was Minister of Health. I was Commissioner for Health and Food Safety, Special Envoy for Universal Health Coverage at WHO level, of course. But finally, I am newly elected member of Parliament, the first time.
Elizabeth?
Well, thanks so much, Fred. And I think, first of all, congratulations to yourself and Elena and all the others that really managed this week in New York to, again, keep brain health on the agenda and I think make so much progress. I think that was very important and even exciting to see because I saw all these social media messages, etc. So you really managed to create momentum, which I think is very important. So you mentioned, indeed, I'm working for the European Policy Center, a Brussels-based think tank. The European Brain Council is one of our members. So again, it's very good to see that connection as well. And we do a lot of work. I mean, we're, as they say, a generalist think tank. And I think the beauty and also the more intellectual power is that means that we work on a lot of different topics. And the reason that I'm saying that is so important for health, and especially to also look at health from a more strategic perspective. Because I think ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the full-scale invasion of Russia and Ukraine, and certainly also in the current geopolitical context, with also a lot of dependencies on the one hand that we need to address from a health perspective, but certainly also the opportunities that offers. So we do a lot of work on health, and I think for me, brain health is a very vital component of the work that we do, because it linked to so much elements of today's discussion. It really links, of course, to things like, for example, the demographic transition that we see unfolding in front of our eyes with people getting older, and therefore the quality of the brain becoming more and more important. But at the same time, it also links to the skills agenda. That is very important also due to emerging technologies like the AI, where we see, on the one hand, dystopian scenarios of people saying, well, all jobs will disappear. On the other hand, people say like, oh, well, that's great because of the demographic transition, we actually need indeed more efficiency. But I think that the role of humans and their creativity and their brain power is very much needed to also think a bit more hybrid intelligence and to, I think, anchor that better also from a policy perspective in EU agenda. So like you, I've already speaking too much, but I think it shows you how important the brain agenda for me is. And perhaps one element, and I also love to come back to that, for me also as a woman, there is also a strong link with women's health. So also last week at the European Policy Center, I published a paper with a colleague on women's health. And I think there is a specific discussion to be had also on women's health and women's brain health. So I stop there, but I think there's enough that we can discuss.
Yeah, and very likely, if we don't have the opportunity to address that last point, it's probably going to be the topic of next year's panel. Elena, I'd like to turn to you, not on that specifically, but I'm tempted to ask you, having brought this lineup of brilliant speakers for us this afternoon, what would be your expectation in terms of the conversation, and what would like to see that we are touching upon that is so important in the eyes of EN at the moment?
My expectation, I think, that thinking together and acting in our own town, in our own country, will be the most relevant message that we get. So I think that, as I said, the European Academy is the objective of neurologists is to reduce the burden of neurological disorders in Europe. When we think, I feel dizzy, if I think that neurological disorders are the second cause of mortality in Europe and the top of the list in the charge of burden. So as a neurologist, my mission is to reduce this burden. So I hope that today we act, and it's a call of action that everybody will be in the loop, multidisciplinary collegial work.
Mm-hmm. So Arabella, well, I think we can almost applaud to that and all agree to this, but Arabella, you emphasized the lived experience and the importance there. So as Elena is saying, brain disorders altogether, number one cause of disability in Europe and in the world, second cause of mortality in Europe and in the world. Do you feel that we have the right level of investments, and where do you see that it is necessary in order to address the needs of the community that you represent?
Sorry, can you repeat the?
So the level of investments.
Okay.
What should they address, and are they addressing the needs of patients?
Well, I think that first of all, it comes down to the fact that in all these equations, we need to involve patients as much as possible, because basically patient's voice is the one that turns solidarity from an abstract concept into the lived reality. And I really think that, we need to center more on the lived experience, as I already said, because neurological patients and even caregivers, if we think about them, face a long-term, often invisible challenges, for example, and they do have a lot of mental challenges, and they face social isolation. I think there is so much to be learned from there, and that is basically the fact that we need to make sure that everything that we drive has a relevance for the patient's community. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that our purposes are aligned with the unmet needs. And so I should advise for a more patient-centered approach and involving patients as active participants, maybe to get them into advisory boards, and always keep the patients and their experience closed. Yeah, and speaking about brain health, of course, we do speak about a holistic approach, not only about problems of the central nervous system, but also about, for example, emotional health that we all need. At one point, sometime in our life, maybe we are all patients. We can become patients. So we need to prepare. We need to make sure that we prevent certain situations, and we need to make sure that everything that we co-create together today is going to be relevant and will have a direct impact on patients' lives.
Denis, I'd like to turn to you. I remember when I was a very young lobbyist in Brussels and you became Commissioner for Health, you had this agenda around the 4 Ps with prevention, promotion, participation, and all the rest of it. I'd like to ask you about a new P word, which is prioritization. Do you have the sense that we have enough prioritization of issues such as Arabella just mentioned? And obviously, I mean...
Thank you. I'm
expecting an answer which says no.
Also.
Yes.
You know, I see my friend Angie Rees from my DG Sant committee. It's good to see you here in our room. Colleagues, you know, can you imagine? Now on every corner, you see words, mental health. Okay. In another corner, you see AI, artificial intelligence. My question is, if you have no brain, artificial intelligence can help you something? Nothing, you know, because, of course, when we're speaking about mental health, a lot of experts around us, and nobody knows what does it mean. But do you have mental problems? Okay, we all have mental problems. Brain health can include all dimensions, including mental aspects. But brain disorders, brain diseases are so complicated. They are very difficult to diagnose. Arabella, thank you. You presented your story. It shows me that now, as never before, we need to raise questions. How can we move much more quicker addressing problems? Because your problems are so multisectorial, so, you know, complex one. It means that it requires from our side effective multisectorial response. And of course, also, your question was, in your opinion, is brain health currently receiving adequate attention and prioritization at EU level? Answer, of course not. Of course not.
That's exactly the answer I was expecting.
But what does it mean? Because, you know, at EU level, we are always going from program to program, from action to action. Europe is beating cancer. Oh, okay, it is European Health Union. Okay, then COVID was on the stage. Okay, we need to do much more on cross-border healthcare threats and establish preparedness unit. Okay, now all are speaking, you know, we have a lot of mental health problems. Let's do something with mental health. Of course, and finally, look, we can do something with cardiovascular diseases because it's a main killer. My question is, it's something new? And why we are going from program to program, not keeping in mind that health, brain health, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, all issues require very comprehensive...
I'll ask you to hold the mic because we have people online.
That's okay. You know, it is absolutely important to say...
And part of our script was also a question, and I'll read it out loud, and thanks for the EN team for preparing this. What strategic measures could be implemented to elevate brain health to the same level of investment of other priority needs?
I can tell you openly, I am just trying to do a very difficult job. To convince European Parliament, to convince Commission, to convince Council, to establish pan-European ecosystem for research, investment, innovations, building on infrastructures. You belong to rare diseases, for sure. We need to understand we have in our hands European reference network, 24 pathologies, united 1,642 hospitals. We have in our hands European big data, health data space. We have biomarkers, biobanks, we have 1 million genomics program. We have efforts to establish 13. We have now in Europe 13 artificial intelligence fabrics. It is time to join those infrastructures, to build supranational pan-European infrastructures which include all problems, addressing all topics, starting with brain health, finishing with cancer, starting with rare diseases, finishing with diabetes. We need to do something. And we need to go from old paradigm. Healthcare is member states' responsibility. It's big lie. It's big lie. Healthcare is also European Union responsibility. Who can address problems being alone in Romania with your pathology? No one. You need a lot of efforts from all 27 members. We need centers of excellence. We need, advanced therapies. We need a lot of history. And of course, we need also to have a good environment which can allow us to develop drugs, medical devices, and clinical trials, and be faster. We need to deliver our obligations as fast as possible, not in 30 years. In 30 years, I will be in the sky, you know. It's not so important for me. It means that I need to invite you. European Health Union requires pan-European ecosystem or infrastructure for research, investment, development, and this is my main message today.
Okay, thank you. So that's very clear. Please, those in agreement, feel free to. And yeah, we can make it even more interacting. So you can yell and shout and cheer, and that's cool. Elisabeth, I'd like to turn to you because this element of the momentum, the right time for action, but also the strategic transition, that's something you've been working on at EPC. And I'd like to maybe invite you to comment on the rising effort around the brain capital and the brain economy that we have been working on. So the floor is yours.
Well, I think, Vytenis, you just mentioned a really important word, which is indeed paradigm shift. And I think that is exactly what we try to do with the brain economy. And I think for those of you perhaps that are not yet familiar with the concept, it's really important that indeed the brain economy sees brain health as a very important driver of both individual, but also as collective growth and well-being. And it really sees the importance of cognitive, emotional, and social skills. And in my introduction, I very briefly referred to a few reasons why that is so important. I think indeed, first of all, starting with a demographic transition, we already see lots of people getting, of course, older, but also having diseases that come with it, such as Alzheimer's and other diseases, dementia. And especially if you realize that 1/3 of all healthy life years lost in health can be attributed to neurological disorders, it tells you how and why it's so important to focus on this topic and also to think about much more preventative approaches. And I think that also links to the work that you've been doing when you were commissioner. We're still at a point in time, and I think, again, when also you realize that this is the discussion in the context of the multi-annual financial framework, where health is being seen as a cost, not an investment. Whereas if you invest in health, it has social repercussions, it has societal repercussions, also for the world of work. People can stay longer in their jobs, they're healthier lives, they're better caregivers and whatnot. So I think from a demographic perspective, it's really important. At the same time, especially if you think indeed about the future of work and the changing world we live in, it is also very important to think indeed about the human brain and the human mind when it comes to the big transformation with artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies that we currently witness. And it's really important to, of course, flag this narrative, but I think also concretely translate it into a policy narrative. And as you say, that means that indeed we need to speak to the health commissioner, because as much as he will come up with a lot of initiatives, I haven't heard his vision for brain health yet in his mandate. So in that respect, I think, again, in the context of everything that member states are currently negotiating on with the parliament, in the context of the MFF, with the Brain Health Partnership starting early 26, this is the momentum to make that call and to translate the brain economy and also the brain health agenda into a policy narrative.
Awesome. And so we look forward to hearing from the happy few invited tonight to speak with the Commissioner. Anyone in the room who is invited, please make sure that you convey the message and support it. Arbella, I'd like to come back to you because there is one notion that I believe we have circled around in the conversation, is the notion of trust between all the, let's say, interested parties in this work of ecosystem generation. In your view, what steps would need to be taken in order to ensure that trust between all actors, let them be patients, professionals, or healthcare regulators?
Yeah, but before answering to these questions, I would just want to underline something, the fact that us patients living with neurological conditions, but not only, you mentioned rare diseases, us patients and patient advocates are more than ever prepared to become equal partners in all these processes. Because even EFNA is taking a lot of effort to try to teach, to prepare good advocates. And we feel, even myself, you know, I'm not even from a medical background. I'm more into philology, some other field, but still, since 2019, I did a lot of trainings like you, Patty, and you wrote these trainings and so many, just to be able to be equal partner in all this process and to try to advocate at my best potential. So yes, but coming back to the trust, I would say that we do need three important things like transparency, because transparent communications of priorities and even funding outcomes. We at EFNA, we really think that patients and family need clear, accessible information about how and why investments are needed and are made. This will automatically demystify the policy making and will for sure show a commitment to accountability as well. We need also to make sure that we are included, as I said earlier, in all decision-making processes, because it is, at the end of the day, a co-creation. And as I was saying recently to EuroNMD Summer School, nothing for us without us. This is a slogan that it's quite common, especially in Eastern European countries, where, you know, we face more challenges than ever. And then we need to make sure that we do have a sustained dialogue, and I would even suggest maybe establishing some regular forms of dialogue between all the stakeholders, including the patients' representatives, because this will provide good feedback and will help in trying to reevaluate the entire process and readapt it if necessary. So yeah, I would again say just transparency, inclusion, and accountability. We need to stand accountable for what we are about to build.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arabella. Vitalis, you made a vibrant speech for this ecosystem generation. As Elizabeth was mentioning, this is also something we are working really hard on in the area of brain health, alluding to the emergence of the partnership within Horizon in January 2026.
Absolutely.
So now I'd like to ask you about resources to be allocated to this big endeavor and this big picture. So, and on the issue of trust, how can we ensure sustainability into this model?
When we speak about resources, please keep in mind that it is fight in front of new MFF, new multi-annual financial framework. But first of all, thank you for your excellent representation of patients' organizations. I spent a lot of years with Eurordis, with patients, different patient organizations, and we can include into ecosystem patients as one of equal partners. And our idea is to organize on 9th, 10th, and 11th of December this year, a high-level ministerial meeting, 3 days high-level ministerial meeting, where we can invite more than 300 participants from scientific community, scientific pillar, from infrastructural pillar, second one, and third one from policy makers pillar, policies and financial. Why? Because we need to fight and to propose. Yes, we have good opportunity to establish pilot project on building on ecosystem based on 3 reports. Based on the Draghi report, which argued that we need to develop competitiveness strategy for Europe. Medical devices, orphan drugs, clinical trials require a lot of efforts and to boost competitiveness. Second is, Letta report, Enrico Letta proposed that much more than market report. He called for possibility to have infrastructure for research, investment, and in innovation as fifth freedom of European Union. Europeans, do you remember 4 freedoms? Freedom of movement of people, movement of money, movement of services, and movement of goods. Now we need 5th one. Free movement of research, investment, and innovations. And I am big fan to fight and to say, yes, it is, Letta report proposes a very excellent future. But we need to have infrastructure, and that's our idea is to build second day to discuss about infrastructure, keeping in mind 4 existing infrastructures now. And then, finally, policies. We can assess legal frames, we can assess policies, and we can assess what? We can assess a situation, how many money we can dedicate in next MFF, covering all means of all situations, not only diabetes, cardiovascular, but brain health, because we need to have comprehensive program which can help us move forward in all directions. It requires not a big amount, between 28-32 billion euros. It's not so big compared to all, you know, to Draghi proposal to invest every year about 800 billions. We require not so big, but what we require, to have separate line in MFF, that it would be dedicated to pilot project to establish pan-European infrastructure, including all capacities and all segments. Because otherwise you can always do the same. Every 1 year, brain health, another year, mental health, next year, obesity, next year, diabetes, and all I ask you, why we are not see prioritization? Time to act and time to change, because excellent report, third one is Manuel Hayter. Manuel Hayter built report, align, act, accelerate. Please read those 3 reports. Letta report, Draghi report, and Hayter report. And you can really be inspired by ideas that we time to act, to align, and to accelerate, but in all directions. Not leaving no one behind. Believe me, slogan, leaving no one behind, is European slogan. Let's do it tomorrow. Let's fight and let's push Commission and push Council. Why I'm so active? In 2027, Lithuania would be presidency country. And my job is to encourage you, Lithuanian government, to keep it on the presidency agenda. And now I am pressing Cyprus. Then we will go into Ireland, then Lithuania, Greece, trio, and we will see, are we capable to keep high on the agenda such idea to develop pan-infrastructure? Because it should be called European Health Union in reality.
Thank you, Vytenis. Another vibrant call for action. And okay, I'll probably slightly contradict what you're saying, because we have probably one key example in the brain health ecosystem. And Elizabeth, I'd like to turn to you to ask, in terms of incentive and seeing brain health, and you mentioned the concept of brain economy as a potential boost to our competitiveness. I know that you also have an announcement to make on behalf of VPC today. So we're noting the conference in December, and we are fully standing behind it and would like to be associated with the endeavor. But I'll leave you the opportunity for another announcement, maybe.
Well, thanks, Fred. And it's true, it's a report that we published today at the European Policy Center. I think it cost you less time to read, perhaps, than the 3 reports the Commissioner just mentioned.
But is it a summary of the 3? Then it's helpful to read it, and then you get what's in the
Absolutely. So together with my colleague, Pavel Shubura, we published a discussion paper on innovation across the life cycle of brain health. And what we propose there is, and I think it comes back to my point about the importance of elevating brain health to the policy agenda and translate it to that level, to really ensure that the life science strategy that we have, which is ambitious because it's about Choose Europe, it's choosing Europe in 2030, which is basically in 4 years. And I think there's still a way to go, especially if you also compare what's happening in China, also in relation to what's happening in neuroscience in China. I think these are vast developments. And I think as the EU, we're lagging behind. But I think what is important to, I think, on the one hand, also to make that ambition concrete in the life science strategy, but also to advance the brain health agenda. And so my colleague Pavel and I, in our paper that we published today, so please look at epc.eu and you'll find it, we propose to actually pilot the solutions from the life science strategy in the area of brain health. And I know that we're short in time, so I will just mention a few. But for example, the importance of the flagship of multi-country clinical trials, where there's a lot of language and actions in the life science strategy. It's really important to do that in brain health as well. Because I think since the 2010s, we have seen that clinical trials in neurological diseases are going down. So we need more activity, we need more clinical trials, and especially I think the scaling up via multi-country clinical trials is very important. But I think another point, and Arabella, that links to what you said, it's also really important, and I think the reason that we chose the word life cycle in the title of our paper is that the patient's experience data we need really from the research phase till the phase of market access provisions at national level, where we also see that it's important to look at your patient population and the importance of real-world data. So it's really interesting in the context of the project that we're doing currently, that the EMA is also writing a paper. I think they just released, the European Medicines Agency this week, a paper where they will also build further with stakeholders to see what they can do more concretely to include also patient experience data in all the different phases of the life cycle. And I think that is especially important for brain health. So again, our idea is if indeed you pilot the solutions proposed in the life science strategy, you really advance the brain health agenda very concretely.
Well, thank you very much to you, Elisabeth, and to the three of you. Elena, it's now time for us to move on and for me to relinquish my role as moderator. I hope that we are meeting your expectations that you set in the beginning, with a word of apology for exceeding slightly the time, but you could see that all panelists were really eager to chip in the conversation.
I think the energy and the passion of this panel have been contagious. So I think we have to keep this momentum and really act, as you said, I will say today, not tomorrow, to act today. So I think we have to move on. So thank you so much to all the panelists. Let's put your hand close. Thank you so much. And to keep the momentum, thank you for, you are taking care of your brain very well, I have to say. So we said that the second part of this session is a fireside chat. And we talk about innovation and what is, besides the artificial intelligence, that is a big innovation from one side, is technology in neurology and in psychiatry, in neuroscience, in the neuroscience field. So this is an emerging, really, issue now in Europe for several reasons, and this is the reason why we have invited Dr. Virginia Mayeux. So she is the director of the neurotechnology at the Center for Future Generation. Welcome, Virginia. So Virginia, she leads work on the societal, ethical, and legal implication of the advances in neurotechnology, and you ensure that there is support for well-being and brain health, and we protect also our citizens, their fundamental rights and freedoms. You have a PhD, you have, I think, a very diverse education background with a PhD in sensory neuroscience, and also experience as a policy analyst at the European Parliamentary Research Service. So you are the best person really to talk with us and tell us, I think, everything we want to know, especially where are we going with the neurotechnology? Where is the field going, and do you think that it can be really expand and make a difference and impact in Europe?
Yeah, thank you so much, Elena. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to the EAN and the EBC, and of course EHFG for having me here. It's a real pleasure. Neurotechnologies, brain interfaces, that kind of thing, they've actually been around already for many decades. So you might think of EEG, electroencephalography, cochlear implants, deep brain stimulation. But yeah, what we've seen recently is that advances in AI, also new sensor technologies and new materials, are pushing the field forward at a really incredible pace right now. So we've actually seen a 4-fold increase in the number of neurotech companies since 2010 compared to the past 25 years. So it's really accelerating. And so many experts that I've spoken to say that we're on the cusp of a neurotech revolution. So just to give you a snapshot of what I mean, on the medical side, implantable brain-computer interfaces are all the rage, and they are showing remarkable progress. So these are devices that can help people with paralysis regain the ability to control devices or robots and even communicate with their loved ones, which is really incredible. And of course, I'm sure you've all heard of Neuralink, but there's also many others like BlackRock Neurotech, Paradromics, as well as minimally invasive solutions like Synchron and Forest Neurotech. And they're actually all conducting human clinical trials already. But we're also seeing new and promising non-invasive therapies. So transcranial magnetic stimulation for brain injury and also major depression, and devices that combine EEG with electrical stimulation for epilepsy through personalized neuromodulation. So really exciting stuff. There's also the consumer side. And this might actually surprise you, but we recently did a market analysis, and we found that today, out of nearly 300 neurotech companies that we looked at, 60% of them are consumer-focused, not medical. So most of these companies are targeting wellness, which is sort of health adjacent. So for instance, things like improving sleep, reducing stress, tracking focus, or cognitive performance. And these are all non-invasive devices, of course, usually EEG, but we also have FNIRS, a functional infrared spectroscopy, EMG, Meta just released a device a couple days ago, and peripheral nerve stimulation due to regulatory reasons. And so these are packaged into increasingly compact form factors like headbands. I actually have 2 of them here, which you're welcome to come have a look at. And also recently into wristwatches, like the Meta one, into headphones, and even earbuds. So obviously the signal quality of these kinds of devices is nowhere near clinical grade. But there's also a lot of hype and some misleading claims in this sector. But still, I think it's a really interesting sector to watch, and I'd love to tell you more.
So thank you, Virginia. This is why we need you in all this very complicated world. And everything has a cost, right? So we know that medication can really be efficacious, they can help us, but we are warned about all the adverse events, the complications. What is the dark side of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, like I said, I think that this sort of mainstreaming of neurotechnologies, especially when we think companies like Apple have a patent for this technology in their AirPods, right? I think this has a huge potential for actually being a really powerful boon for healthcare. But there's also a question of, this is still very much in the consumer sector, right? And so there's very little oversight and there's very little integration with healthcare. And also neurotechnologies, they interface with the brain. As we said in the previous conversation, this is really the seat of our sense of self, our personality. And that's set the stakes very, very high. So there are quite a few concerns with especially the consumer devices, also the medical ones as well, so they're more strictly regulated, of course. And that is, first and foremost, that neural data is probably the most sensitive type of data we can generate, right? And even from these relatively basic devices, it can reveal not just your current health status potentially, but also your mood, your attention, your personality, and maybe even your risk of developing a disorder later down the line. So in the wrong hands, this kind of data could be used for discrimination, could be used for profiling, could be used for surveillance, or even manipulation of people. So just imagine for a sec that your headphones that you wear every day are tracking your engagement while you're scrolling social media, and that the social media platform is tailoring your feed to your level of attention to what you're looking at. It seems crazy, but there are early studies saying that that's possible. And I see someone shaking their head. I mean, I'm sure tech companies would love that. So it's really a risk we need to be careful about. The other concern I really want to raise is about consent, right? So say, for instance, in the workplace, if you have a neural device which is helping you track your focus and mitigate stress while you're working, that sounds fantastic in the context of brain economy, as we just discussed. But imagine that your manager has access to that data, which there are several programs for employers to give these devices to their employees. Imagine that that is being used to inform your promotion or dismissal or even coercion, right? Then we really have an ethical problem. And that's where the consent issue becomes critical, because if it's your employer, do you really have a choice in saying no to that if your job is on the line? Also, more broadly, there's a kind of an interesting philosophical question here, because when it comes to consent, to something that interfaces with the very organ responsible for giving that consent, right? And so that becomes very complex for people who are suffering from mental health conditions or neurological disorders, and perhaps have a reduced capacity for informed decision making, that they might be more willing to take on additional risks than are necessary. It becomes very complex. And just one last one, while I'm on the topic of risks. We're actually at CFG, so Center for Future Generations, we're especially worried about how blurry the division between medical and consumer spaces are becoming with the absolute growth of the wellness sector in the last few years. So we do see, many wellness companies really do want to make a difference, but we do also see some misleading claims, and it's not always apparent these devices are not actually medically approved. So we need to sort of take a very, very close look at this market and ensure our regulatory frameworks are up to scratch.
So thank you, Virginia. It's quite a messy field, it looks to me now. So how can policymakers and practitioners ensure that this neurotechnology dimension, this new space, let's say, that is deployed in the way that there is respect of individual rights and all the other stakeholders?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked, because we're working hard on this question at CFG now. And you'll actually find under your posters on your table a couple of our recent publications. So if you want to take a look, please do. So I think for me, the key word, and we've heard it many times, but it's really important to say it again, is trust, right? So first off, we need to trust that the companies are acting responsibly. We need to trust that the regulators are protecting consumers whilst also supporting innovation. And we need to trust that users are informed and empowered to make their own decisions about these interventions. So how do we do that? Well, first off, we think that the moment to act is now. This might seem like a future problem, but we believe strongly in anticipatory governance, and that means enacting, sort of having policy conversations before problems arise. And so that's why we're calling for an EU neurotech strategy. So there's basically 3 pillars. First, we need to fund responsible innovation. We need technologies that support unmet medical needs and that prioritize safety and ethics. We need transdisciplinary research. We also have spoken a lot about that. And most importantly, we need to ensure mechanisms that these technologies are reimbursed by insurance companies, as we discussed earlier, because without that, they'll never actually succeed. The second pillar is that we need what I call regulatory cohesion. Europe already has very strong protections, especially when it comes to data and especially medical devices, but there are still gaps, particularly, as I mentioned, for the consumer sector. And actually, paradoxically, medical devices, the companies often tell us they have a clearer regulatory path than the consumer, because in consumer neurotech, there's at least 10 different policy frameworks that apply, and many of them are within the last, I think, 2 years, were 8 of them in the last 2 years. So it's very complex for businesses, and it's also potentially leads to gaps and inconsistencies. And then the third, again, very important topic of discussion is public engagement and awareness, right? I mean, neurotech is not going to succeed without public trust. We all feel intrinsically that it's a very sensitive technology. So that means we really need to involve the users, the researchers, the industry, the policymakers, and the citizens in the conversation and shaping the field together. So yeah, as I mentioned, we've been working hard on this topic, so please do check out our work, and I'll be happy to talk about it more in the workshop we'll do in just a sec.
Put your hands together, really. Virginia, thank you so much. So you just started to, with all these thoughts and advices and comments to stimulate our brains. Right? So we are already set in different working groups, and I think you want to introduce what we are going to do to keep the momentum and to share our thoughts together.
That's exactly right, yes. Okay, yes, so I just told you a bit about neurotech and what it might mean, but I don't want you just to take my word for it. I want you to also kind of imagine for yourself. So we're going to do a little scenario exercise, and you have everything set up in front of you already. And for our online audience, there's also a Slido version, so stay tuned for that. So on each table, you'll find a sheet of paper with 6 mini scenarios, which are in the form of what-if questions. Okay, so first and foremost, I want each group to pick just one. You're just going to pick one of these questions. Take one once you've decided which one is most interesting and place it in the center of the wheel on the poster. Okay, so then have a little think about it. And just remember that these scenarios are varying degrees of fictional. They are fictional scenarios, but they're very much based on real trends that we've observed and also real research. Once you've imagined yourself in that scenario, you can take the colored Post-it notes that are there and just start filling in the wheel with your thoughts and your ideas, especially looking at positive impacts for brain health and society, but also thinking about potential negative impacts. And you also have a Post-it for anything else that comes to mind. Yes, you also have little prompts around the edge of the wheel, which might help you to think along different dimensions, but it's not too strict, so don't worry about it too much. All right, and for our online audience, we should have a Slido poll coming up in just a second. It's the same thing, but you just get one question, which is, what if brain data were as easy to record as heart rate or step count? And you have the same task, which is to think in terms of positive impacts, but also potentially negative impacts, and anything else that comes to mind. So go ahead, get stuck in. I think we have about 30 minutes, if we have enough time left. Have a discussion and think about it.
All right, folks. It seems that the time for playing games is over, but you can carry on, of course, after the end of the session. But we are unfortunately getting to the end of the session. So in order to maybe bring us to the end, I would like to ask you, Elena, what you were taking out of what you heard from the different tables, but also how getting this back at EN and engaging with your peers and with your colleagues, how neurologists, clinical neurologists, clinicians will integrate some of these dimensions, and how you think it is really advancing the work at EN.
Thank you, Fred. I think also Isabel told us the importance to have everybody in the ship and also the patients, right? Because we are working with patients. We are working with human beings. We are not, robots going around. So, and we have also our personal feelings. So the neurologist really wants to increase education at peers level, education with the patients, teaching. We have to teach medical students. There is a lack of physicians in Europe, so I don't think that the robot will inject any product in the vein. So we need a physician within the nursing, within healthcare professional, and this is our role, to educate, to teach, to advocate for everybody who has neurology for a better brain health in Europe. Mm-hmm. And prevention is another key that we didn't have the time to discuss too much.
Well, but so that's a topic maybe, again, that we can put in the box of ideas for next year. But you were also talking about early detection, maybe, which was another one?
Well, it was also coming from the working groups, right, that link to technology, that technology innovation and neurotechnology especially can early detect some brain disorder, which is already true. Right? We have some devices, some biomarkers that can really help us to detect even before the signs of the diseases they're starting. But it has a cost, right? So everything, as we said, we have a cost, so we have to think about sustainability, right? So all these things have to be really sustainable in Europe. We are not living in another continent or in the moon or in Mars, where somebody is going.
But now I'd like to ask you, because it's like circling to the introduction we provided, also to the link, to link it to the topic of this year's forum, solidarity and the social contract. A lot of the elements in the conversation that I could pick up was really revolving around the notion of trust. So we can see it's many challenges that we are identifying, very complex, needing multifaceted answers. So where do you see these multidimensional efforts, and where would you kind of prioritize the call to action? So because we have had policymakers having a vibrant call, patients were also there with their voice, as you mentioned, but here the crowd is really diverse. So would you already identify what you would ask and to whom?
Well, I will ask everybody. So I'm very picky. I think I will ask everybody because, as we discussed, we need a holistic, a multi-intersectional approach. And neurologists alone, they don't do nothing. So we really need everybody. So we need together to find a strategy, prioritizing brain health, but with a strategy that is shared. We talk about trust, transparency. We talk about human rights. We talk about ethical issue for privacy. So we need really together. It's not one person alone. It's really an effort of the community in the European space and in the space of the brain in Europe.
Well, I mean, on those words, I think, the sense of commitment that you expressed on behalf of the neurological community, the invitation to everyone to join, and then the call to action for everyone to take ownership of this agenda. As far as I'm concerned, I simply would like to share the impression that I've got reading the 6 scenarios that Virginia has brilliantly prepared. I had the impression that future is now, because many of those, and we were joking about this, were part of exercises that have contributed into in recent or less recent past. And actually, some of these technologies have actually become a reality. So it's in constant evolution. And I think that, Virginia, what you were saying about the need to be really on our toes in terms of creating not only an enabling framework for innovation, but also the right ethical and safety standards in order to make it happen in a safe environment for all of us, because of those far-reaching interactions and far-reaching consequences is absolutely a necessity. So,
and before thanking you, Fred, I really want to thank everybody, the panel members, and also you who made this happening, coming today. And I hope I call you to be the ambassador of brain health in your environment. And I want also to thank the public and private investors in brain health, and particularly, I think, some industries. We had Roche that supports us, because we need, as we said, everybody. We are not picky talking about brain health, really together. So this is a call. Protect. We have to protect our brain. It's the most important treasure that we have. It's only one. There's not brain transplant by now. So thank you very much again, and also all the staff for what has done and the support. Thank you very much.